Hi, this is Philip Roberts, and I'm vlogging for my Game Design as Cultural Practice class. This vlog is on NeverAlone. I would characterize the design of NeverAlone as somewhat sparse and isometric. We can tell it takes place in the frozen tundra of the northern Arctic, which doesn't exactly lend itself to a wide color palette. That being said, the game does use strong colors, whites, blues, reds, and greens, to indicate various dangers or points of interest. You'll often see white portraying various interactables, whether the spirits that are trying to help you or various actions that you can take. These are often used as a tutorial in case you forget the actions you're supposed to do. These are somewhat more diegetic as they fit into the art style of the world. However, when introducing mechanics for the first time, there's non-diegetic instructions for your controller. There are narrative segments in between that are illustrated in a style that I would assume is similar to the Inuit tribes. All of this, combined with the cultural insights videos, hopefully conveys a visual style that's respectful of the Inuit people. The audio design is functional and helps out the game, although it doesn't particularly stand out. This is somewhat a platforming puzzle game, and the music will be a little more contemplative during the puzzle solving elements, while ramping up during the more action-oriented sequences. The interactions for the most part combine standard platforming elements. The fox and Nuna have their own unique interactions. For example, the fox can climb certain walls, and later on when he's the ghost fox, he can move around freely, and all throughout interacting with spirits, which provide platforms to open up new paths. Nuna for the most part is a little less mobile than the fox, but she has a magic bola that she can throw for a distance, which will destroy obstacles and often open up a new path. You can go back and forth between the two characters, and in doing so solve different puzzles. For example, as the fox you might shimmy up a ledge and then throw down a rope for Nuna, or Nuna might move a box that has a platform attached to it that the fox below can jump on to move. There's dozens and dozens of more iterations upon the mechanics, which makes up a majority of NeverAlone's gameplay. There are some quote-unquote boss battles, but for the most part they're simply running away and just involve quickly platforming from ledge to ledge, while trying not to get caught by the boss, which could be a polar bear or the evil man. The narrative design is told for the most part through cutscenes in between moments of platforming and puzzle solving. There are some moments where there is the narrator speaking over top of the gameplay, but usually there's not a lot going on the screen. This gives a kind of traditional feel for most game design, where you have a gameplay section, and then a narrative section, and then a gameplay section, and a narrative section, and so on. That's not to say both aren't done very well, which for the most part they are, but in these types of games I often get the feeling that you have the game and then you have the narrative story kind of separate from it. They're two distinct entities. And that's not to say it's bad, but there are other games that will go and mix the two a little more than I feel NeverAlone has. The mechanics of the game, again, are kind of based upon platforming standards. You move around with the joystick or directional buttons, you press the bottom button to jump, and then you have various interaction buttons. I will say at times the mechanics did feel a little bit iffy, as if the animations didn't entirely match up with the action on screen, and there was a little too much give and take at the edges of platforms. This did impact somewhat the feel of the game and led to certain moments where I would think I've made a jump, but just fail dramatically. Without straying too far into actually just reviewing the game, I will say that platformers are very, very picky as far as how well the control scheme is used, and it really can make or break a two-dimensional side-scroller like this game. The controls were functional, but they could have been better, and I'll leave it at that. That kind of leads to the next point of the critique, where you ask how easy or hard it was to play. And so I think I need to talk a little bit about one of the other mechanics, which is the blizzard. The blizzard will either blow forward or backwards, either making it hard to walk forward, or if it's to your back, you can make longer jumps. For the most part, this is utilized well. However, if the blizzard blows really hard, you have to duck so you don't get blown away. This kind of introduces a time waiting puzzle, which I'm in general not a big fan of. And these type of puzzles often feel difficult because they are indeed frustrating and you'll spend a lot of time trying to complete them by the nature, but they aren't exactly challenging or stimulating in any sense of the word. They just take time to complete. Combine that with the controls not entirely seeming to work all the time, and it can be, well, frustrating. And I'll be the first person to admit that I get very impatient when I get frustrated with games like this, where I fail to execute a jump or some other mechanic, and then have to spend a long time waiting to get back to the moment that I actually wanted to try to redo. I did find the game engaging, especially more for the first half. I do think it stretched out a little bit towards the later end of that, where they started to repeat certain ideas, and it basically came to interact with this object just to continue rather than solving a difficult puzzle. To be honest, though, I was probably more interested in the narrative pieces, which were very interesting, as well as the little cultural context videos. I might have liked just a Discovery Channel special versus actually playing the game. I've tried to read some criticism as to far how this actually portrays Inuit culture, either correctly or incorrectly, and from what I'm seeing for the most part, it does a fairly good job of that. Obviously, I don't come from the background and I can't really judge that, but I do find the culture and mythology interesting, and I think the cultural context videos help out a lot as well. The last thing I'll talk about is the tutorial mechanics, because NeverAlone does a pretty good job of this. Well, they'll introduce a small mechanic and then add on and build on it later on. You'll start off being chased by a polar bear, and then later on you'll have platforming elements thrown in on this, and then you'll have to combine all your skills later on to be able to complete the game.